Good morning, church. Welcome to Cyber Sunday again. I'm glad you're sticking with us through this online experience. I think it's been going well so far. We'll see how things keep moving now with the stay-at-home order that we have. It might change a little bit of the quality, maybe some of the look of what we're doing, but we're still going to try our best to get you an online worship experience every single Sunday. So we're going to continue with our series that we have here in James, and today we're going to be looking at James chapter 3, verses 1 through 12. Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they're steered away by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boast. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. So this is one of those sections that we get to in James that really starts to make a lot of us squirm in our seats. And really, it's something that he's been saying since the beginning of his letter, and he will continue to say it throughout the rest of his letter. I want you to hear what else he has to say about our tongues and the way that we speak, in addition to our text today. So in chapter 1, a text we've already looked at, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen and slow to speak, slow to get angry. Another one in chapter 1, those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. Chapter 2, another one we've already looked at. Speak and act as those who are going to be judged by the law that gives freedom. Chapter 4, chapter we're coming to soon. Brothers and sisters, do not slander one another. Anyone who speaks against a brother or sister or judges them speaks against the law and judges it. Chapter 5, do not grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. Another one in chapter 5. Above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth or by anything else. All you need to say is a simple yes or no. Otherwise, you will be condemned. All of these passages come from the book of James, in addition to our text that we're looking at today. They're scattered all throughout. From chapter 1 to chapter 5, he has things to say about our tongues and the way that we speak, the words that we use. And I think it's safe to assume that the churches that James is writing to is having a bit of a tongue problem. All these churches are having tongue problems. Don't you think that's a safe assumption? I imagine they're having outbursts of anger and issues with their anger. I imagine they're having issues with judgmental attitudes and comments and slander and gossip and bitterness and grumbling against each other and even honesty. And so is it any surprise that James has some of the most negative things to say about our tongues and about the way that we speak? He sees our tongues as these terribly destructive weapons. And if we're being really honest with ourselves, I think most of us could testify to the truth that some of the most devastating wounds we have ever inflicted on someone have been with the words that we speak. And if we're being really honest, some of the most excruciating pain we have ever felt have come from the words that others have spoken to us. I can remember as a child, through tears in my eyes, screaming at one of my friends, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but your words will never hurt me." But it was a lie. And everyone around me knew it was a lie because I was bawling my eyes out, because the truth is that some of the most devastating pain, excruciating pain I have ever felt has actually come from the words of others. They hurt then. And honestly, if I think about them, many of those old words still hurt today. So what I want you to do, this is going to be a little discussion time, and this is going to call for a little vulnerability on your part. I want you to pause this video, and I want you to share a time that you were either really hurt by someone's words, or, if you're brave enough to share this, a time you really hurt someone else with your words. Spend a few moments talking about this with your family, and then come back to the video. Okay, so I hope you had some good discussion, some good vulnerable moments there. James starts with a warning to those who aspire to be teachers. He says, "Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly." Seems like kind of an odd way to start this section, and honestly, if you read throughout the whole section, you get the impression that James is talking to everyone, not just teachers. But for some reason, he starts with this warning to those who would like to become teachers or those who already are teachers. And he says that they are going to be judged more strictly. And he's not excluding himself from this, right? He says we who teach will be judged. And so he's including himself in this. And so the question becomes, why will teachers be judged more strictly? And he's going to answer that question a little later, further down in our reading today, and we'll get to that in a moment. But before he gets to that, he has some things that he wants to say about the tongue. He says we all stumble in many ways, and anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. In other words, we all sin, and we all have a variety of ways that we sin. But, he says, if we can control our tongues, then we can control the rest of our body. If we can control our tongue, he says, then we can be perfect. Not perfect as in flawless, but perfect as in whole, complete, mature. But if we can control our tongues, we can be perfect. He's going to move into 3 illustrations that show how powerful the tongue can be. The first illustration that he uses is this idea of putting bits into the mouths of horses. Horses are these powerfully majestic creatures. They're so strong and powerful, yet all it takes is a small piece of metal, a bit that you put in their mouth to control them. And he says that's the tongue. It's this small thing that's in the mouth that controls, like the bit in a horse's mouth, it controls the powerfully majestic creature. And he says that's how powerful the tongue is. Or he uses another illustration. He says, take a ship as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they're steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go, right? You've got this huge ship, and all you got to do is tell the pilot to turn the wheel, and when he turns the wheel, it turns this small rudder that's in the bottom of the ship. And in this illustration, James actually adds a third element. He talks about the strong winds, and he says the strong wind is trying its very best to steer the ship right and left, trying to tip the ship over, but it's not really the wind that's in control of the ship. It's the rudder, right? It's the rudder. And I wonder if it's like us, right? The strong wind that is outside of us, these strong forces that are outside of us that try to control what we say, try to provoke us into using our tongues in negative ways and destructive ways. They're like the strong wind. And I wonder how many times have we tried to blame, or should I say me, how many times have I tried to blame my poor reactions, my poor use of my tongue and my words? How many times have I tried to blame that on outside forces, on others? This person just made me so mad. Or you don't know what that person did to me. Or you don't know the context. You don't know what's going on, the circumstances. It's the strong wind that's trying to control the ship. But James says, no, you can't blame it on the strong wind that's trying to control you, because really it's the tongue. Really, it's like the ship. It's that small rudder. The wind thinks it's in control, but it doesn't control the ship. The small rudder controls the ship. That's how powerful the tongue is. And only we are in control of our tongues, not the outside forces. So, we're going to have another discussion time here. I want you to pause the video, and I want you to share with one another what are some things that we can do in the moment, right? We're in the heat of the moment with someone or in a circumstance that we find ourselves in. What can we do? What are some things that we can do in the moment to make sure that we don't respond in anger and say things that we will later regret? In other words, what can we do to control the tongue and not let the outside forces, the circumstances, and the other people around us control us? But how can we control the tongue? What can we do to stop ourselves from saying things that we will later regret? Spend some time talking about that together as a family. Okay, so the tongue is powerful. And James says that the tongue can make great boasts. It's small, but it is powerful. And because it is powerful, it can make these great boasts, and it is powerfully effective. But then James gives us this great warning. He says, yes, it is powerful. It is this great power, and it can boast of this great power. But then he says, it can also do some really terrible damage. He says this, consider what a great forest is set on fire. This is the third illustration, right? The horse with the bit in the mouth, the ship with the rudder, and now this, the great forest that is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body. It sets the whole course of one's life on fire and is itself set on fire by hell. Consider these great forest fires, and I've been thinking about the fires in California that happen periodically and seem to have happened a lot more recently, and how all of those are always started with the smallest of flames, with the smallest spark. James says that's the tongue. That's the tongue. The tongue is able to set a forest aflame. Yes, it's powerful and it can make great boasts, but it can also cause some terrible damage. It's pretty harsh. It's pretty harsh. But he's not done, because then he's going to say, and all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures, they're all being tamed and have been tamed by mankind. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. Do you remember what he said back in verse 2? He said, if you can control your tongue, you can keep your whole body in check. If you can control your tongue, you can be perfect. Now, It's almost as if James is saying, good luck with that, right? All these animals in the world and reptiles and birds and sea creatures, all of these things have been tamed by humanity, but the tongue, good luck with that, he says. That's how powerfully destructive James believes the tongue can be. And he's not the first to say this. He's actually kind of digging deep into his wisdom heritage. Because all the way back in Proverbs, the writer of Proverbs talks about the tongue and how powerful it is. And it even says in Proverbs 16 and verse 27, a scoundrel plots evil, and on their lips it is like a scorching fire. And he's not just digging deep into his wisdom heritage, he's also borrowing from his brother, Jesus, because Jesus had some things to say about our tongue, the words that we use, our mouths. Here in Matthew chapter 15, Jesus says, the things that come out of the mouth come from the heart, and these defile you. The things that come out of the mouth, they come from the heart. Remember how we said we can't let the outside forces control us. We can't blame other people for the things that we say. Jesus says the things that come out of the mouth, they don't come from the outside. They actually come from the heart, and these defile you. For out of the heart come evil thoughts, murder, adultery, sexual immorality, theft, false testimony, slander. Or on another occasion, in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus says, but I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court, and anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. The tongue can be a destructive weapon, and it's hard to tame. It's hard to tame. Things just slip out before we even know they're there, right? Insults, sarcasm, gossip, outburst of anger, little white lies. For so many of us, those things just come out before we even know they're about to come out. Humanity has tamed all sorts of animals in this world, but the tongue, good luck with that. No one has truly tamed the tongue, James says. So here's our third pause moment, our third discussion time, calling for more vulnerability. What is your personal struggle with taming your tongue? Is it insults? Is it gossip? Is it outburst of anger? Is it sarcasm? Nikki would tell you that's mine. Is it little white lies? What is your personal struggle with taming your tongue? Spend some time talking about that and then come back and we'll close out our time together. So now James moves on to talk about the double-sided nature of our tongues. With it, we both praise the Father and we curse or tear down our brothers and sisters. With our tongue, we both praise the Creator and we curse those who are created in the image of the Creator. And I really think this is where James was going earlier whenever he gave this great warning to those who aspire to be teachers or who already are teachers. He gave them this warning. And I really think, looking at the whole text, looking at the big picture, I really think that James, when he gives this warning to teachers, he's less concerned about the content of their teaching. I think a lot of times we warn people about being teachers because we don't want them to teach the wrong thing. We're thinking about false teaching or even accidentally saying the wrong thing. But James here, when he gives this warning to teacher, I don't think he's thinking about content as much as he's thinking about character. The warning to those who aspire to be teachers or who already are teachers is to watch your character. How can someone use their tongue to teach others about the grace and the mercy and the love and the forgiveness of God, and then turn around and use that very same tongue to tear others down, to gossip, to slander, to curse? How can a teacher share with others a beautiful text like what we find in Ephesians chapter 4, where Paul will say, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen"? How can a teacher teach a text like that and then turn around and use that very same teaching tongue to grumble and to complain about others? I think James is worried about character. James says, "Out of the mouth comes both praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be." This should not be. And so our message today is this: faith has a way of speaking. Faith, according to James, faith has a way of speaking that's different from the world. Remember chapter 1, a loose tongue totally has the power to make our religion worthless. Faith has a way of speaking that's different than the world. And I think one of the best guides that we can use when it comes to how we use our tongues is that passage that I just talked about from Paul in Ephesians chapter 4. "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." Faith has a way of speaking that is different than the world. Will you pray with me? Dear God, help us to control our tongues. I know that James says that it's impossible, but we can still call upon you to help us control our tongues. So help us to do that. Help us to use our tongues to build up, not to tear down. And let praises always be on our lips, not curses. It's in Christ's name that I pray.